This is the Brian Callen Show. All right, everybody, this is the Brian Callen Show. I almost said Brian Callen Podcast. That's the same thing. I'm hilarious. I'd say we were brought to you by, but I don't think I'm sponsored anymore by anything. That's all right, though. Don't touch my Zoom, Dov Davidoff. I'm here with the great.
It's really cool.
Dov Davidoff, one of probably my favorite stand-up comic in the country.
There you go. There's a lot of
and
mutual
truly
love.
one of my closest and dearest friends. And so I wanted to get him on my podcast. I'm excited about this. Dov, what's going on?
What's going on? How are people supposed to answer that? I mean, there's the professional response, there's a career-related response, there's emotional, psychological, sort of. I'm not sure.
Well, you're a guy. I mean, I'm sorry, but you are as close to a true, authentic comic as I can think of. Dark. You get a case. You get a case of the black dog, as you call it, once in a while, where you can't get off the couch.
Yeah, I get a black dog.
You got a joke where you say, you ever feel like killing somebody, but you can't.
Yeah, have you ever been so depressed that or you ever been? How's it go?
You say you ever want to kill somebody, but you just can't get off the couch. You can't muster the strength to get off the couch because you're so depressed
and enraged at the same time. You're thinking I could kill somebody if they were really close to the couch. Yeah.
Why do you feel that way? Do you think?
I don't know. I think people are born with a sort of not a quota, like an amount, you know how if you're born with some athletic ability, you can improve on that to a degree.
I know all about being born with athletic ability.
Well, of course you do. I mean,
have you seen me run?
Nobody's more representative of.
Have you seen me run through a field of tall grass?
Yeah, I have seen
or on
that.
a track, for God's sake.
No, but like if you whatever speed you run at, you can improve by that. You can improve that by a matter of degrees through training, through the way you think, through whatever it is. You can work on an ability.
Right.
I think happiness is like that. I think you're born with X amount of it. And then, yeah, if there's something miserable taking place in your life, that's going to reduce it to the point where you have a problem. But I think in general, there are people who are relatively happy. Every wealth study, the people that were happy before they made money are the same people that are happy after they have money.
But how do you think one? I know you've made a study.
And so
of this.
I think I'm somewhere in the middle on the pendulum. It takes work for me to try and maintain a degree of levity.
Well, you said something the other night that I loved. You said, I can only really live on the edges.
Yeah. I mean, the envelope is where I feel alive, and in between, there's something about flat, safe places that make me feel like I'm already dead. So I may as well continue to push, the envelope.
Well, it's like
the Hurt Locker.
Yeah,
it's like the end.
Yeah.
Whenever I'm like safe and I have a girl that loves me and
nice
everything's
view.
paid off and a nice view, I feel like that hum in the end of the Hurt Locker, and when he's walking through the shopping area, and you just see all the colored cartoon cereal boxes and the bright lights and the institutional hum of safety, because it sucks. Because the only time I feel alive is in the middle of the night when I'm chasing down some tail that I'm not going to make eye contact with anyway because I'm putting it in from behind and I don't know her name. It's the only time.
I do not know what you mean,
No.
sir. I do not understand that sensation one bit, sir.
I mean, in between sort of those extremes, and in between learning something and reading, I'm turned on by that which is intellectual, but also that which is often sort of instinctual and visceral and animalistic. And I don't know. I got a light feral quality. I'm like a razorback hog in the wild in Kentucky.
I would say for sure you are like a razorback hog, minus the tusks and the scent.
Yeah, minus the tusks.
But you're right. I mean, you are a feral guy, and I think Sam Tripoli one time said, "Funny, the normal ain't funny." I mean, you're far from normal. You grew up in weird circumstances, right?
Yeah, very
a junkyard.
Very odd.
Your mother moved you to India.
Yeah, my father's an uneducated Jewish business guy from the Bronx. My mother's a hippie intellectual wasp from California.
So you got Jewish and wasp in you.
Wasp, yeah, sure.
That's where you get your barrel chest and your athleticism.
Yeah, is that where I get it?
That's where you get to you can throw your hands. You did some boxing.
No, you try and figure out. Everybody tries to reconcile their existence their own way. It's like for you, it was growing up in places that you weren't in for long periods of time, so it creates a kind of.
Look, the
bottom
line
for
is
certain kinds of behavior, and that inclination combined with certain kinds of behaviors and abilities or inabilities manifests itself in who we are as people. And I don't like who I am.
But you, a lot of people would like to be you. I mean, you make lots of money. You're a very successful comedian.
Yeah, but the whole thing about the idea of what somebody else's life is like, no one knows. I mean, the one thing about reading biographies is like you read about people's lives who you think would be a real cherry place to be, and you realize that it's most of the time it's just not that. You read
who are those people? Who are the people that you read about that most impressed you?
Oh, well, you deal with the founding fathers. We could start there. I mean, the real giants among men. But beyond that, early American guys, all those philosophers, anybody who had the balls, or then again, maybe it's not balls. It's like if you're Schopenhauer or Kierkegaard or Wittgenstein or somebody that hadn't been read almost until you died. It's like a Van Gogh scenario. Or I just read Modigliani's biography, which was...
He was a badass. My favorite painter.
Well, I think you're thinking of Caravaggio, who's one of my favorites,
I'm thinking of
too.
Modigliani. I know exactly his
really?
paintings. Those alien, those big round faces,
round,
those
almond-shaped
eyes. Please don't.
No,
don't
you know
ever
your
second guess my
know,
knowledge of art history.
You know your early 20th century
Caravaggio
art.
was a completely different thing. Caravaggio, they say, was an assassin as well as a beautiful painter. I don't know. I know he killed somebody.
He got into some trouble.
But he could paint. Caravaggio. The only way to describe Caravaggio's paintings, you'd need Wagner in the background, just boom.
Yeah.
I mean, he was a bold painter.
Yeah.
But Modigliani,
much more
to me, is
subtle and
subtle.
classic.
Oh, God.
But in his own style, it's very beautiful.
Those women that he paints.
He did a lot of bang.
He did. Huh?
Modigliani, as a young man, are you kidding?
Of course,
he was half Jewish. He never really felt at home. Yeah, his mother. They were from somewhere in Spain. They were Jews, and his father was an Italian guy. But he grew up in Italy. But he grew up sort of with this. His father had lost money in business, but his mother was very cultured. So he grew up with a natural sort of semi-aristocracy. So he had very cultured upbringing, and he could speak French with no accent. So it allowed him to sort of really, assimilate into French culture.
And I want to jump in because the for a long time, especially during his life and well after, the hotbed of culture was always actually France. I mean, Europe.
You moved to Paris.
Europe also was influenced by the French philosophers for the most part. Certainly French art, because French art was not just portraiture. French art was expressionist and everything else. Yeah. So the hotbed of cultural and artistic innovation was in France.
Huge. Yeah.
It really was.
Oh, yeah.
Including well after they became militarily weak, etc. So it was not England. England was where there was great at commerce and institution.
Yes.
But
in terms of culture and art, I mean, French was sort of the apex of what Europe had to offer around that time, I think. And which is, I guess, is the Montmartre area. But most of the aristocracy in Europe. I'm talking about from Russia to Poland to when you were an aristocrat, you spoke French. Oh, that's interesting.
Very important to speak French, and very important that your house was decorated with French furniture.
And that was an indication
art,
of taste,
absolutely.
Of culture. Yeah,
so it's not surprising that Modigliani spoke French.
Very fluent French.
Any more questions about Modigliani, or did you want to correct me? Did you want to correct me on the fact that I was talking about Caravaggio?
I thought you were going to go with Caravaggio, but yeah.
No. Thank you.
Well, I had them confused, which is how I started reading Modigliani's biography.
Okay.
And then I realized halfway
don't
into
project,
it I wasn't
don't
reading
project
about
on my podcast.
No. No, I would never paint you with the brush of ignorance that I should be painting myself.
No, you're not ignorant. Yeah.
No, but it was just interesting.
But now hold on. If you told me I was going to be reborn an Italian painter, and a genius,
I think if he was all those things,
I would say sign me up because it sounds fantastic.
Yeah.
Was he not happy?
Well, in early 19th century, what happened was he was a very great. Like, you ever hear those stories about Robert De Niro's father was that painter who he could have sold the painting but chose not to.
Yeah, well, De Niro's father's featured, I think, in the Met. Or has had.
Right. But the point was with him, it's like unless he felt you really deeply appreciated what he had done, he thought that Cubism was a trick. He thought that the direction that art was moving in was sort of. That he respected Picasso and those guys, but he believed it was sort of
pop culture
a trick or a ruse or something to go, hey, I could get people to buy this because they don't know what it is, but we'll tell them it's cool. It's just that sort of overly intellectualized kind of art.
There was a lot of critique of that. The idea that people with money will buy it because they want to belong to an exclusive club.
Yes.
So that's where Rauschenberg and Kenny Scharf and all those sort of pop artists, came
It's
along.
ironically, I mean, you think of, I guess, the early 1900s as sort of, at least in America, was put kind of a religious, in a kind of conservative time, whereas Paris was a very wild operation they were running. I mean, he ran around. I mean, they talked about how promiscuous, and he used to fuck all his model, all the the women that would sit for the painting.
Which is really interesting to me because it was right on the heels of World War I, which at the time was by far the worst war anybody had ever experienced. The trench warfare, it went on way longer than anybody thought.
That's when a lot of the problems started. When war started, everybody got very poor, and there were no resources, and he didn't have any resources to begin with. His family would send them like a stipend or whatever you call it. They'd send him money every month.
But that's so interesting to me
that
after World War I, it's almost like people said, well, there's no point in, you only live once.
Yeah.
And when a lot of people we know have died already.
Well, that's interesting.
I wonder.
The idea of loosening up as a reaction to the times.
It feels that way. I mean, I would imagine that psychologically, you've got an...
it didn't happen after World War II. It didn't happen that way after World War II. But that very well could have been.
It probably didn't happen after World War II as much, I would imagine, because the world was broken up into very, think about the world was divided between a democratic and very repressive communist regime. I mean, there was no art really to speak of.
Yeah.
Remember, the Soviet Union was ruled by Stalin, and I don't have to tell you what he did to his own people, and then Khrushchev, who was no nice guy himself, and this notion of communism, this movement, was not something that, from what I understand or what I saw, nurtured the arts at all. It stifled innovation. It did not reward the original. There was no room for the original.
No.
There was no room for the original because
which is another form of religion, right? That's Stalinism. It's like a real kind of the state became the god.
That's exactly right.
And you would forego your individual kind of ness, or that which you wanted for yourself,
because an individual was not
for
part
the
of
greater
community
effort, the communal effort.
And to me, it's the great evil because there was no room for the original. And if you were an expressive person, generally, and by the way, see Mao's China, if you wore glasses and you read and you were a writer, for God's sake, if you owned property, you were killed.
It was very anti-intellectual kind of regimes because you don't want the people questioning. I mean, it's also why, they send young people to war. I mean,
because the idea was you could create the perfect society and the perfect man, the utopian society. It's where totalitarian regimes come from. That's the
awful.
notion. Totalitarianism meaning control over the total person, their thoughts and their body. And that to me was one of the great things about it's
very anti-human spirit,
Well, and people always talk about, well, we have a lot of problems in today's world and stuff.
Although
like that.
I was talking to Wayne about this, and the about how I felt like you think about America. I was reading this Ben Franklin biography, so reading about the founding fathers were tremendous, and sort of the Thomas Jefferson ideals and ethics and what they wanted to create, and the reactionary response to aristocratic Europe and all that bullshit over there, is that it seemed much more pure, I guess. Maybe it's hindsight, but now every time I hear about sort of principles of freedom or principles. That all makes sense to me if it's practiced. And then I was listening to some lecture about the support of, weren't we giving like $200 million or $1 billion a year to Egypt's, the guy they just overthrew in Egypt. I forget his name.
Hosni Mubarak?
Mubarak.
We gave money.
Mubarak,
we gave
Saudi Arabia is the most backward culture.
That's right.
I mean,
but you have to put that into context. You have to put Egypt into context. You have to put, because remember, Egypt had been at war with Israel. They signed the Sinai Treaty.
All that's fine, fair. I understand why you're paying off the strong man. Just don't tell me that your principles for doing it are democratic.
No, it's geopolitics, man. It's geopolitics.
Right. So then don't tell me your principles are it's all about freedom. The reason you do things is for freedom. Clearly. There is data and evidence that that's not the case.
Of course. We support Saudi Arabia. Remember, Saudi Arabia supported
a great deal.
Told
that. I don't like the government going, hey, we're all about democracy. Are you?
No, but hold on. You're right. You're right. The biggest problem with being a politician and being a country, especially a country of power.
Just don't lie to me about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just say, hey, listen, man, if you run a business, you say, hey, we have to make a profit, so I have to buy it for less than you do. Don't tell me that you bought this for $20 and you're selling to me for $20. Yeah. I know you're lying.
That's right.
And I don't like being lied to.
And the duplicity in our foreign policy, which is, I don't know how you would avoid it, is one of the problems that we had with our standing in the Middle East. It was always the knock on the United States.
If a politician said to me, if they were like, hey, man, we're doing the best we can. The reason we have to support this regime is because if we don't, it's going to get even worse and more messy.
Listen, the country that supported these madrasas, these religious schools in Peshawar in Pakistan and in Saudi Arabia, it was all Saudi money. It was all our biggest ally.
It was the biggest ally. Yeah.
So yes, there's no question. But look, listen.
It's part of real life. It's lesser of a number of evils, and we do that every day.
Let me give you a great example of what we're dealing with now. Syria. The Assad regime in Syria is killing its own people. And very brutally, this just massacre 4 days ago or whatever, they killed 50 children. The forces came in and killed families. Yeah. They shot children in point-blank range. Now, there's an outrage everywhere, including in Syria. And there's a great deal of pressure from various parts of the world, including our own government, on the Obama administration to do something about this. Mitt Romney's calling for it, McCain's calling for it, etc. Here's the problem. And
absolutely.
Who do you arm?
Who are you going to go punch in the face?
Who do you arm?
Absolutely, yeah.
Do you know who these freedom fighters are?
Yeah, you arm them. Maybe they put. I mean,
we did the same thing with the Mujahideen. Exactly,
precisely. And that's who the Taliban. That's where they peopled the Taliban.
That's
through,
right. That's right. So when you're in a position of power, it's very difficult to make these decisions because then you get people who say, rightfully so. They had a guy.
I don't argue.
He said there's a moral the world has a moral obligation to bail the people of Syria out. Well, okay, you're right.
But how do you do that?
How do you do it?
Absolutely.
How do you do it?
Listen, I mean, I was reading some statistic about Africa. It's like all of the aid money, if just getting the aid, let's say you got boxes of money and you just want to get it to the people. You can't get it to the people.
That's right.
They have one of those dictators storing food to bolster his side of whatever the conflict was.
Right.
Like, try getting into the people. You can't just go in and solve
what happened
it with
in Somalia
money.
and what happened in Ethiopia.
Right. My beef is just be honest with me. I realize every now and then there's some underhanded deal taking place.
Well, that's what geopolitics is. You
absolutely
choose your side.
You choose your side. That's true. Here's what's not true. When a politician looks in the TV camera and goes, well, we're doing this for our democratic ideals. You're not. You support regimes that are anti-democratic.
Well, however, I do believe that the United States and a lot of people in
our
government...
If all of things are equal, they would prefer democracy.
A lot of people in our government and the United States in general has a lot of very good and idealistic people in power who try to do the right thing. I do think we, are, as a democracy, ultimately politicians are responsible to a populace, and that it's not perfect, but this country represents as close to to that as you can, that ideal as you can.
Better of the,
But what I'm saying is that a lot of people, for example, in the CIA, I believe in our military, in the CIA, in our State Department,
I believe they care.
I believe that they do care, and I believe that they're actually trying to do the right thing.
My beef is with someone who tells me we're only doing this for democratic ideals. You're a liar.
No, you're right.
And yeah, sure, there are millions of people.
It's a messy game.
It's a messy game.
So
tell me it's a messy game.
There's an article in New York Times.
So tell me we're doing the best we can. Don't tell me we went in there for our democratic principles because we care about their freedom.
Well, but that's what a responsible press is. The New York Times had an article recently about Obama has a kill list. They give him a kill list. Yeah. They say capture or kill. The problem was two of the people. One girl was 17 and another boy was 17. Yeah. And so if he gives an order to capture or kill, typically they're going to kill him.
So, I mean, you can't have sex with a 17-year-old girl, but you can kill her.
This is the murky. This is where you can have sex with a 17-year-old girl in Vegas. Not that
is that true? Is that true?
Yes. Not that I've done it, but I'm just saying that is a fact. Now
that's interesting.
Yeah, that is.
What am I doing in California? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that is interesting.
But the bottom line is I would not want to be somebody in power. I wouldn't. It's a very difficult fucking job, man.
Absolutely,
it's big responsibility.
Absolutely, it is. No doubt about it.
We have American citizens on that list, and we killed an American citizen in Yemen.
Well, there's nothing wrong with that, right? I mean, if they're
the question is who's
they represent some sort of major.
But the question is a lot of the evidence that they use to kill the American citizen is top secret. So
we don't really.
It does raise questions. Yeah. I don't know, man. It's part of this is what they call the fog of war.
Game. Yeah, the fog of war. Sure.
You know.
Absolutely.
It's
a
difficult.
mess. You know. I mean, even when you're fighting the good fight, you know, like, you know, in World War II, when you didn't have a choice, when you're really doing the right thing by the world, it's still a messy game.
I would, guys who are listening, I have a podcast called Mr. Pink, and I think it's on. I think it's on Red Bands when I was with Red Band and Death Squad, and I'll get it for myself. I'll put it on my website. But he was a real. Don't say the name because I think you know the guy's name. But he's a real CIA paramilitary guy. And I had him on my podcast, and you should listen to how he talks about geopolitics.
I'd love to hear it, man.
I learn something every time I talk.
Yeah, I'd love to hear something like that. I mean, it's also unique.
Let's get to American culture. What bothers you about our culture? Because I know a lot does.
Well, I mean, the list would be much shorter if it was what doesn't. I just feel like.
Actually, let me put some words in your mouth. Yeah. I know you love the fight game.
I love the fight.
I know when you feel the most alive, you're either on stage with a broad or in a ring.
Sure. Yeah, or reading.
Or watching fighting.
Or reading.
Or reading.
Yeah.
What is it about fighting? Do you think that
it's a meritocracy in a world without them? It's a truly beautiful sort of art form. I don't want to get into semantics. I'm not sure what, we'd have to define art and all that, but it's one of the few honest things that you can experience in a world without that. It's like most of pop culture is, sort of, there are very few films that come out that are made about stories that I want to see or experience.
Do you have some favorite
Most
films?
Comics, I think, are horrendous. I think they're dopes. And so when something happens that is what it is. It is what it says it is. It's like I'm obsessed with sort of a sense of justice or a sense of like, I just want a meritocracy. I want somebody to go, and that's what I loved about in this country when it was first beginning. That's what everybody was talking about. They were like, we want to create. It's impossible to create a meritocracy.
Well, it was that way. It was that way unless you were black or Chinese.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It was an enormous hypocrisy. But it was a reaction to that aristocratic sort of titling.
That's what Thomas Paine wrote in Common Sense. Common Sense was all about that.
And so in the essence of that kind of ideal, the ideal as well, it's a sort of, it's an effort.
It's raw competition without any, nothing's going to help you unless you have the skill and the courage and the intelligence.
Yeah. All those things maybe are true of a basketball game too, but I don't feel the same way about it.
Well, but isn't basketball
the fighting game boils it all down?
Isn't basketball and boxing? I mean, isn't basketball? Isn't football? Isn't
anything
every
with
sport
a ball,
a watered down version of fighting?
Yeah, sure it is.
I mean, it is, right?
Absolutely.
What I love about the UFC is it's two men who get in there and they're basically coming to as close as it is possible to kill each other with their bare hands. And for me, that's what's so amazing about it, the amount of skill it takes. And and I love all sports. I love football. I love watching baseball, basketball, and they're beautiful games, but and they're complex games and they have their own skill.
But they're games. They're not fights.
There is something about watching two men really bang it out that taps into the caveman in my genes. I just admire it so much.
Yeah, and I think that's even.
We were hanging out with Mayhem Miller last night.
Yeah, last night. Yeah,
you and I, and I was looking at that guy, and he's lost. He's had some tough losses, but you look at that guy. He walks around at 210 pounds. And he's got huge
hands.
He
just rehydrated that. He may walk around heavier than that. I mean, he fought at 85 4 days ago.
Yeah, he's just a giant with those hands, that big jaw. I mean, I just feel like a girl around him. I feel like
that's because that's exactly what you are relative to what you're talking about. I mean, relative to that part of him. It's like, it's.
I remember you looked at his hands and you looked at yours and you went, "Look at his hands."
Yeah, I know. I just looked.
Me too. I got these little fucking hands.
Yeah,
that guy's got.
I'm thinking to myself, hey, I mean, a dress should have come with these hands.
I know he's got a set of mitts.
Yeah, it's a real hooks.
But what's funny is that we're all vulnerable. What's funny is that we're all ultimately made of flesh and bone.
Yeah, but we also. I think there's a natural inclination to admire that which you don't possess.
Yeah, well, that's for damn sure.
It's like Mark Twain said something about that, but it was like even Fidel Castro said something about that. He was like these politicians that could read and write, these really crooked guys that he wanted to murder, would come to the countryside, and all of these sort of hill folk that couldn't read or write would look up to these guys, and he knew they were scumbags.
Jeez,
you know, that's what I hate most, I think, is that element where you're being lied to. And I guess I feel like in pop culture in this country, I think much of it is kind of a lie. I mean, much of it is not really taking place. It's like you see an actor on the cover of a magazine. I'm not saying you can't appreciate the actor's work and they're emotionally facile and they got a beautiful smile. Shut the fuck up with your opinions. Unless you've written something, read a lot, which you probably haven't because I mean, with the exception of a script that you memorize pieces of, it's fraudulent.
Yeah,
I don't like frauds. I just like people who just say, hey, this is what's going on.
It is fraudulent. That's why it's amazing to me that we live in a culture that admires actors and not writers. I mean,
well, yeah.
I mean that's a huge issue, I think.
Thing. Well, I mean, it's clearly symptomatic of something that's gone astray, you know.
Yeah, but great innovators, writers, those are the people who should be on the cover of our magazines.
There's no doubt about it.
And
I mean,
instead, we're
guys
watching...
have done bits about it. Rogan's done bits about it. All these people have done bits about, I was writing a bit about fuck a scientist instead. You know, the people that the average, woman or man for that matter is attracted to are not representative of the best of what we have to offer.
No, we like symmetry and we like smooth skin. And I, for one, am one of those people.
Well, but you don't mistake it for something else. No. You're not going, I want to hear this person's political opinions because of that.
Right.
And that's what the problem I have. I don't have a problem with going, if you like something for what it is.
Sure.
Just be honest about what it is.
Like Kate Upton doing the Ducky. Or the, or the Dutchie, whatever it's called.
Yeah, whatever it is.
I mean, I watched that and I was like, "That's probably the hottest thing I've ever fucking seen in my life." And I could be her dad, and I would make her call me daddy. Please understand that.
That's right.
And I have a right to. And I'm sure if she saw me, I would charm her pants off.
But there's something about even like when people talk about culture in France, on the street in Paris, everybody's like, "These people are rude." It's like, no, they just don't smile for no reason at everybody. It's
Absolutely.
Like when I go to do a gig, somewhere, and you go and do local news in the morning, and you got these people that are smiling, and it's like they're on a left track or something.
It's amazing.
It's almost like it's just
when you
see this makeup
that's
and a
right.
smile, and it's this.
What a terrible job!
I wrote about it. Yeah.
When you do those, I do those shows. We both have done a lot of those morning shows, those local morning shows. And hey, this is Tom from Fox News. Whatever. And you're like, man, dude, you read off a teleprompter and you smile with all that makeup. That's got to be a terrible fucking job. And for some people, that's the pinnacle. I'd rather die.
Well, that's the thing.
You got a big square head with a great haircut and a suit and a lot of orange makeup.
Yes,
and
nice
you're just
makeup.
reading from a teleprompter, and you're just a great guy with a great voice. Kill me right now.
Yeah,
I always feel like doing something really inappropriate.
Oh well. I mean, it's because that's how you ended up doing what you do. That's the inclination is to not listen to the rules because I don't believe in the rules.
Well, yeah, obviously, I'm looking at all your tattoos.
I don't know about that, but
you got a lot of tats. You got a lot of writing on your. Where is that from? Viktor Frankl's book. You got a paragraph from his book.
Ernst Becker. Yeah, it's about.
It's from
creating meaning.
It's Ernst
yeah,
Becker.
Yeah, sure. We're the only animal that knows it's going to cease to exist, so we got to create our own meaning. We got to figure out I mean, unless you're faith-based sort of reasoning or religion, it's like you have to create your own meaning because there is no inherent meaning
I've always
in
been
existence.
a little jealous of religious people.
Me too.
That sense of faith.
Oh
that
God,
they have.
are you kidding? If I could just go, hey man, that like the meek shall inherit the earth, that kind of thing. It's like, hey, fuck it, no matter what's going on, I show up in church on Sunday and I do the right thing and I behave and then I go to a really good place forever. It's like. Clearly, that shit was made up by somebody trying to.
Although a lot of great, a lot of the founding fathers.
No, that was all figurative. They were not literally
religious. There was an idea of providence. It was a strong idea, the notion that there was God out there, and.
But figurative ideas of God. I don't disagree with that. If you tell me you have a figurative idea of God, that's great, man.
Me too,
I hope,
on
some string theory, physics level, I hope we can, figure something out that says, oh, there is some form of order in the universe. Or just believe in a general sort of, we're all stardust. We don't know what's out there, but I believe there is a human spirit. It's a form of a God. It's a form of sort of ethereal thing to look up to. That there is a greater sense of something than ourselves. But when you tell me it's a guy who cares about whether or not I jerk off, then you're an absolute psychopath.
Yeah,
you're a psychopath.
Well, that's where religion. I think when
like
religion
abortions. I think
into,
everybody that's thinking about an abortion should get one. Everybody. I mean, these abortions, they should hand them out. We should encourage everyone.
But what if I told you? that's
an exception to the rule.
But no. But scientifically, there is a way to make an argument to suggest that fetus of 2 months old is just like you, except for just not as developed. So just like an infant isn't as developed as you are.
I'm fine with doing away with it.
You are, okay. So you put a price on human life the way most people do.
I don't even think they're people until they're like 3 or 4. Absolutely.
Well, the way I look at it is
2 months. 2 months.
We put price on human life every day. I mean, if you really want to save lives, bring the speed limit down to 30 miles an hour on the highway. It'll save a lot of lives. Nobody wants to live that way.
Price? Are you kidding? There's mass. There are ethnic cleansing still going on in certain parts of the Sudan and certain parts of Africa.
No, I'm just talking about polite society, moral society still puts a price on human life.
Oh, yeah.
You know, because you do.
Peter Singer stuff. I was talking about sort of morality involved in eating meat. And he's like, it's a sentient being. Now, you can argue, you can rationalize it. And I eat it, so I'm a hypocrite. But at least I know I'm a hypocrite. I don't mind if somebody's a little hypocritical if they admit it. It's like... It's
funny you saying this because I've been thinking a lot about eating meat lately.
Well, it's wrong.
Yeah.
And it's wrong on the following basis. Peter Singer is this philosopher out of Princeton, a brilliant guy, and he writes all about ethics, right?
I know who Peter Singer is.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people don't. But ethics, and so it's
I'm
good.
sorry, you're right. We're doing a podcast.
Yeah, we're doing a podcast.
I keep forgetting. I forget literally that we have a mic in our hand. I literally forgot I'm doing a fucking... That's funny. What is the book he wrote?
It was like on ethics or something. But he made an interesting point, which was he was like, well, okay, so you can eat animals because there's a differential in intelligence. That's really the argument, right? Yeah. Is that you're superior intellectually. He goes, okay, well, then compare a severely retarded child with an ape, and you will find the ape, in many cases, more intelligent. You can prove that. You know, you can prove it through all kinds of cognition tests. You can prove it. It's like, is it then okay to eat the baby? It's like, his point is, it's a sentient being. It's a being that moves towards pleasure and away from pain, just like we do. Mm-hmm. You have no right, and if you extrapolate the idea out further, if the aliens were to come here, and anybody who can reach here from a star, which the closest one's 8 light years away, is clearly technologically far more advanced than we are, and probably far more intelligent. Yeah. Maybe the differential exists between an alien and us. It's the same difference between us and an ant or whatever. They can make an excuse based on our philosophy to keep us in cages and eat us.
Well, you know, in India,
and I don't want to be eaten.
In India, the Jains, which is a very it's a sect of Hinduism it's a fierce yoga. It's a type of yoga where they literally will wear masks. First of all, they won't even eat anything they won't eat an onion or a carrot because it's the root of the
Oh, that's interesting.
It'll kill the plant. So they'll just eat the tops.
Really?
Yeah. So they won't do that. On top of that, they'll be very careful where they sit or walk. You see them sweeping the ground in front of them to move it out because they don't want to kill any organized.
Right. Well, if
the problem is life eats life. That's the problem. The problem in the wild is life eats life.
Well, but they have to. A tiger can't choose to live.
The Maasai,
you can make a decision. They can't choose.
The Israelis, people like that
if
who live in the
live,
desert have to do the same thing.
Nobody's arguing that.
Yeah.
Everybody's just arguing, saying if you live,
I just said the Maasai and the Israelis. But I was just thinking about how sun-baked that part of the world is. Of course. You're going to be a nomad. Back in the day, you were a nomad. You were a nomadic.
If you're in the middle of the desert, you got to make do. You got to figure out how to
I like to go way back to the Old Testament. The Israelites were they couldn't really plant shit. They had to live on their goats.
It's like it really, it's the idea of that kind of morality, given a choice.
You should try to
look at the way animals are
create
treated,
the least amount of suffering as you can.
If anybody watch a documentary about a factory farm and still was able to just go, it's horrendous.
Yeah, it is. That's why I don't eat factory farmed meat.
Oh yeah. I don't.
Although I just had chicken.
Right, but it wasn't necessary. Well, we don't know where. I guess it wasn't necessarily.
I choose to believe it was actually flying in the air, and it died of old age in the middle of the year. It had a heart attack.
Yeah,
but it had a smile on its beak.
Yeah, sure.
So, do chickens fly? I'll answer the question. No, they're grouses, wood grouses. Very elusive creatures. In fact,
wood grouse.
If you're in the Amazon and you catch a grouse, which is really a wild chicken, a feral chicken, you're not going to get a lot of meat, and they're very hard to catch. But it would suck to be in the Amazon as a chicken, regardless, because my God, you're walking food.
You're food. Yeah,
you're scurrying food.
Yeah,
just the way I feel about penguins. What the fuck do? They have to waddle miles, and then they jump in the water, and there's sea lion. There's those sea leopards.
Yeah, it's brutal. Although the penguins are surprisingly agile in the water. They're
a leopard
seal
will kill a man, right? They'll eat a man.
Oh, that's interesting.
Oh,
I didn't know that.
Oh, no, a leopard seal will kill you.
It's fun. It's interesting when things that are sort of seem cute and pet-like.
Just Google
they'll take
leopard
you out,
seal.
Yeah.
I'm going to fucking do it right now. Keep talking.
What time is it, by the way?
We are good. We are, it's 9:24. What time do you got to get out of here?
I got to go, man.
You got to go?
Yeah, I got to be there at 9:45.
I think this was good. We got a lot done here.
We got it done.
I appreciate you coming out.
Hey, anytime, bro.
This was Dov Davidoff, ladies and gentlemen, and we will have him back. We will have him back. We're at 35 minutes, which is exactly how I like to keep things short, sweet,
cogent,
and alive.
Yeah, concise.
Thanks for listening to the Brian Callen Show. I wish I could say I was going to be doing stand-up in June. I'm going to be doing the Parlor Live, I think the 12th through the 14th of July. But I go to New York to shoot a movie with Michael Rappaport and John Stamos for the month of June, and I'm pumped about that. It's called My Man is a Loser, written by my buddy, written and directed by my dear friend Mike Young. I'm very proud of him. All right, man. Thanks for listening to the Brian Callen Show. Dov Davidoff, thank you very much.
Thanks, guys. God bless.
Pearls of wisdom.
Pearls of wisdom. See you in Miami Improv. Okay.